Welcome into another edition of the high school football podcast for rural West Tennessee here on JacksonSun.com. I am high school sports columnist Brandon Shields, and I actually have Michael Odom with me here this week. I'm good. Last week we kind of unveiled this podcast. This is your first time on, and just kind of what we're going to do is just kind of talk about a few of the big topics kind of surrounding West Tennessee high school football coming into week 2. And first off, just kind of looking back at week 1, a big score that sticks out to a lot of people, a lot of fans who've been following high school football around here for the last few years, is that 45-0 loss that Northside took at Oakland last week. Northside's been one of the best programs, one of the more consistent programs in the area over the last few years. It was their first time playing with a new coach, but they were also playing against a bigger school. 45-0. Do you read a lot into that loss?
No, you can't. I don't think you can read a lot into that one. I mean, Oakland is not only a 6A school; they're one of the best 6A schools. They're ranked number 2 in the state. And you look at the league that they play in with teams like Blackman and Riverdale and the history that they've had, Smyrna with state titles. I've heard that region, that district compared to the SEC of high school football in Tennessee. And so you're going to get to see the best of the best in that region. And, going to play in a stadium like MTSU is going to be a new surrounding. And, I don't think that 45-0 is going to be what you can, this is the Northside team that you're going to see for the next 9 weeks.
I will admit, if I'm a Northside fan, I would feel better if they had at least scored at some point during the game, whether it was, even if it was against the third stringers in the second half. But there are plenty of lessons hopefully to be learned from a 45-0 loss. But I do think that this Friday, when they host Liberty, I think we'll probably get a better gauge of where they're at this week.
Yeah, if Friday night they lose 45-0 again to Liberty, then that's going to be a good sign that Northside's not going to be where it's been the past couple of years. That it's going to be a rebuilding year.
All right. Well, also kind of speaking of losses that local fans may have been disappointed in, were probably disappointed in their teams this past week. Not necessarily the fact that they lost, but just kind of how those losses happened. Southside had a late lead of 2 scores against Ovine County on the road. Ovine County comes back, wins that one in the closing minutes. USJ has a 2-touchdown lead against FACS at home with, 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. FACS comes back, forces overtime, and then wins in overtime. And also with USJ, that's also with a new coach. Anything concerning about that?
I mean, you got to look at Southside as being somewhat concerning in the fact that, the easy part of their schedule is these first 5 games.
Right.
And if they're going to build any momentum going into the second half and facing those tougher teams, it had to happen now. No, last year it was almost the opposite with, Southside able to score late to beat them. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence post on whether that was a bad loss for Southside. In that Ovine County was young last year. They were building, getting stronger for this year. So, I don't know yet on that one.
Yeah, you kind of alluded to it. I mean, last year's win over Ovine County, they needed the late turnover. They scored right at the very end. It very easily could have gone the other way. So I don't know if necessarily losing to Ovine County, if Southside is in just dire straits compared to what we thought about them this time last week. But definitely giving up that lead, there's probably going to be some conditioning issues that need to be addressed there. And Coach Moore, Brian Moore, Southside's head coach, when I talked to him Friday night, he talked about just frequent mistakes that the guys made that put them in bad situations. So it's definitely something that they need to take care of. FACS, though, coming back from USJ, a lot of people thought that USJ kind of just had this game in the bag. I saw FACS a couple of times in 7-on-7s last year, and knew they were young then, and saw that they were an athletic team then, and knew they had a lot coming backs. And last year, that game was close before USJ scored 1 or 2 times they're late to pull away. So, having said all that, they still had a 2-touchdown lead with 3 minutes left. I mean, just kind of what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that one's a little more concerning to me. Is losing a lead to FACS. If you look at last year, the teams they competed with on the D2 level, and not trying to take anything away from FACS, they're just not one of those elite teams in D2.
They didn't even make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, that's got to be a concerning loss. We had this, you bring in a new coach, and things aren't going to get easier along the way. They'll have some easier district games, but you've still got TCA this week. You still got St. George's. So you still got some tough opponents, and they're going to have to right the ship pretty quick.
Right. Well, moving on, there were 5 teams out of 32 that we covered that had week 1 off. They didn't play week 1. They had their bye week. Pretty much opened their season with a bye week, or they opened their season this week and don't get a week off. Just kind of what's your thoughts? I mean, I've talked to different coaches over the years. There's 2 different schools of thought. Just kind of where do you lean about if that's a good thing or not?
I like being able to play that week 1 and find that week somewhere in the middle that you can, have some practices, correct maybe something that's going wrong, get some of those players healthy. I mean, it's football. You're going to have some slight injuries. You're going to have some twisted ankles, some hurt wrists, some bruises. And to have that week in the middle to be able to heal some of that before, some big region games and then going into the playoffs. I like to have it in the middle of the season and to be able to play the opening week.
Particularly if you're pretty sure that and pretty confident before the season that you're going to have a long playoff run, it's almost maybe even good to have it maybe around week 8, because if you play 15 weeks, that's right in the middle. But I don't know. I mean, we had Eric Swinson on our radio show this week, the head coach at Huntington. He said, yeah, if you got a lot of injuries and you think that week off can help a lot of those guys heal, and you don't lose, either A, you don't risk a loss because you don't play those guys, or B, you don't risk even worse injury because you do play them, then yeah, it's a good thing. But there's something to be said for taking the boys out of their weekly routine. With 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old boys, they're used to practice on Monday, practice on Tuesday, practice on Wednesday, walk through on Thursday, play on Friday, then you have the weekend, and then do it all over again. And then all of a sudden you don't have that game on Friday, and that just kind of shifts your whole schedule around for that week. That can just throw somebody off for, I mean, I've seen teams where it just kind of ruined their whole year, where they were like rolling, had a lot of momentum, boom, the bye week comes, and they stumble for the first week or 2 after that, and they never recover. So I can see it either way as a positive or a negative.
Yeah, if you're going to have a bye week 1, then you maybe want to play an easier opponent, Middleton, something like that there towards the end, so that you can maybe rest those guys but still have that continuity.
One more thing before we move on to the next topic. One temporary advantage, the 5 teams that were off this week: Haywood, Crockett County, Hardin County, Huntington, Lexington. Their opponents don't have they got scrimmage or jamboree film, but they don't have actual game film on them to prepare for them this week, whereas they do have film on their opponents this week: Westview, Marion, Illinois, Riverside, Adamsville, and whoever that 5th opponent is, Camden. So, that may put those 5 teams at a little bit of a disadvantage, but we'll just kind of see how that goes. Interesting stat relating to this. Last year, these 5 teams, they had the bye week off. They all won their first game, but Haywood's win was over JCM. So take that for what it's worth, and a couple other wins were over teams that wound up not being very good last year. Speaking of week 1, it's an old cliche in football that football teams generally make their biggest improvement of the season between week 1 and week 2. So taking into account last week's results and then this week's opponents, who do you think is a good team that has a chance of showing a lot of improvement?
the obvious choice. It'd be Northside. I mean, you can't go much worse than a 45-0 loss. But, you know, maybe a Liberty even has an opportunity. Yes, they beat Henry County, but, you know, the players and the coaches, you could tell after the game, were not happy with the way they played. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't with who they played. It was they weren't playing up to their standards. A lot of cramping, a lot of, you know, turnovers, you know, missed blocks. And so you're going to turn around and play a big rivalry game in Northside, and I think Liberty could really show, hey, we're really here to. We moved up to number 2 in the state rankings. We're here to prove that we deserve to be there.
Well, you were at that game. Was there, you know, they jumped out to that good start. Did Henry County do anything different, or did they just start shooting themselves in the foot that kept them from kind of building on what they built on early?
I mean, defensively they played well. They struggled to give Newble time in the pocket to make some decisions. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of blocking miscues there in the second quarter, and that led to Liberty having negative 15 yards of rushing. Some of that was stuffing the running back, and some of that was a couple sacks. Mm-hmm. So Liberty was not able to really get their offense going. Now, part of that was Henry County. I mean, they are ranked in 5A football for a reason. They're a very good football team. But defensively, Liberty looked strong. Mm-hmm. And so it was just kind of the offense was faltering, but the defense said, you know, we're going to hold it here.
Well, there are a number of teams that we could really that I could really highlight in this, and even as you've been talking, I've had a few come to mind. And I'll just kind of list each one of these off. Peabody, after the way that they lost to Milan, you know, they've got Middleton coming in, so it's kind of hard to just really read how much they improve. Particularly, you know, Middleton's coming off a loss against Rossville Christian, so you can't really compare those losses. Then Humboldt, you know, they got the win over Fairleigh. They go to Milan this week. I don't even think they've got a win to show improvement. But if they do win, that would definitely be a big statement, a bigger statement than what they made at Fairleigh this week. And I would even throw TCA in there as well. You know, with the loss, they had a good start against St. George's, and then St. George's kind of pulled away there. If they can go to USJ and compete well with USJ, I'm not necessarily saying USJ should win that one. It just appears on paper that they should. They just seem to have more weapons, although they didn't have when they needed them most at the end of last week. But TCA is definitely one that could make some significant improvement there. Real quick before we wrap this thing up, biggest rivalry game this week. I think we got 8 games that could be classified as rivalries. You want to list those off real quick?
Liberty Northside, USJ TCA, Humboldt Milan, Lexington Riverside, Chester County McNary, McKenzie West Carroll, Camden Huntington, and Hardin County Adamsville.
All right, we got 1 minute left. Tell me real quick which one you think is the biggest game this week out of that group.
I think it's got to be USJ TCA. Close proximity to private schools. You know, it's become a close competition in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Northside Liberty, I think, is the biggest one in Jackson. But I think that the Hardin County Adamsville game, it's the only matchup of Dirty Dozen teams that we've got ranked in our Dirty Dozen rankings. It's the only matchup going on between 2 teams with that. It's almost a playoff preview, but and it's most of the time it's a good game. Last year would not be part of that discussion. But anyways, Michael, thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening, y'all. Good luck to your teams this week, as hopefully your team will show a lot of improvement compared to last week if they did play. Thanks for listening. See you at the game.